Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your Master of Fun and Wonder, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, I am Robert Meyer Burnett, and this, of course, is Robservations, the show about something. And boy, I gotta tell you, as many of you know, I'm a Star Trek fan. I've been a Star Trek fan all of my life. And you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community, you imagination connoisseurs, know that I just love Star Trek. Well, anyway, that being said, I've talked a lot about how I have been disappointed in Star Trek as of late. And I mean as of late, since 2009. So we're going on year 11 of what I'd like to call the Star Trek hostage crisis, where Star Trek has been under the stewardship of people that want to turn it into something that it's not. And boy, I never thought that I think one of the shortest episodes of Star Trek yet, 7, 8 minutes, 8 minutes tops maybe, might have been... there was a short trek earlier this year that I thought was one of the most offensive Star Trek episodes that I'd ever seen. But maybe last night's episode, Children of Mars, pissed me off more than I could possibly. Now, here's the thing, you guys. You know me. I'm the Prince of Positivity. I am Mr. Fun and Wonder. I am bringing you all the glorious, great stuff that I love, that you love, that we all love. It's all great, right? However, the thing that bothers me about what I see in modern Star Trek is everybody is trying to turn Star Trek into something that it's not. And worse, they're trying to turn it into stuff we've already seen before in other franchises. As a matter of fact, I wanted to speak about specifically one thing that has been plaguing Star Trek since Star Trek 09, where, hey, we saw Vulcan destroyed. We saw Nero, with his future technology, destroy one of the founding members of the Federation. Of course, we also saw in that movie that Romulus was destroyed too. So basically, a race of people that were formerly from Vulcan, and of course Romulans were offshoots of Vulcan, they left. You just blew up both of their homelands, starting in Star Trek 09. In Star Trek Into Darkness, we continued the theme of 9/11 type imagery and destruction. Let's start a war with the Klingons. Let's kill 72 genetically engineered human beings. Let's crash a gigantic starship into the middle of San Francisco. God only knows how many people that killed. In Star Trek Children of Mars, we saw another 9/11 attack, a 9/11 attack against the Utopia Planitia shipyards above Mars, which, of course, since the Next Generation has been a place where they've basically built all kinds of Starfleet ships, including the Enterprise D. So basically what we saw yesterday was two girls who hated each other, and they get in a horrible fist fight, played to modern rock and roll music, and then they find out that a huge 9/11 attack has occurred, killing thousands of people, including presumably their parents, of course, and we know that it's a synth attack, so it's synthetic human beings, call them replicants, call them Cylons, call them ex machinas, call them Datas, call them Borgs, whatever you want to call them. Not exactly a fiercely original idea, is it? The bankruptcy of ideas in modern Star Trek is appalling, to be honest. It's appalling. But that's not what I think that the fundamental mistake of Star Trek, all of modern Star Trek is. And I feel that until that mistake is rectified, and by the way, it's not going to be, under the current stewardship of Star Trek now, I find what they are doing, I find the producers and the writing staff, they are incapable of embracing what Star Trek is because it's too hard. And I'll tell you what it is. What do I think is the fundamental flaw of all of modern Star Trek? Here's what it is, and it's very simple. When you go back to the original series, 3 seasons of the original series, 79 episodes of the original Star Trek. By the way, I would like to correct myself. 2 days ago when I was talking about Star Trek, I said that Star Trek debuted on September 6th, 1966. I obviously meant September 8th. I was probably thinking about Canada or something like that, but I did make that mistake. I want to clarify. I've known that my whole life. You can go back in my social media profile. I always celebrate that day. But here's the thing. The original Star Trek, when it debuted, it implied something. There was an implication that permeated the entire series. And that implication was that humanity had got its act together. And the crew makeup of the Enterprise was one indication that people from all over the world were working together, specifically even on the bridge. People from all over the planet, really. And you saw throughout the course of the series, you had different kinds of people. You had Percy Rodriguez, a black man who was a Commodore, commanding a starbase. You had Dr. Richard Daystrom, a black man who had created duotronic computers, the most sophisticated computer technology humanity had ever seen. Presumably, too, Vulcans as well, which meant it was a big deal. So Star Trek showed us, but what was implicit more than anything, the Starship Enterprise herself stood in as a proxy for humanity's greatness. In order to build spacefaring vessels like Constitution-class heavy cruisers, humanity had to get its act together. Now, there's a reason why we never saw the Earth of the 23rd century during the original series. For those Star Trek fans out there, we did not see Earth of the 23rd century until the beginning of Star Trek the Motion Picture. But it was implicit in the show itself that Earth, that humanity had got its act together, and that there was some semblance of a utopian civilization. Now, here's the thing. While we didn't see it, the way people treated each other, the technology we had at our disposal, the way we dealt with other races, the fact that humanity had got its act together, and that the inherent optimism of Star Trek began with that notion. It began that humanity had put aside its petty differences and was able to go out amongst the stars. Now, obviously, for audiences of 1966, when this show debuted, we hadn't done that. But what was interesting, as a science fiction allegory, or an allegorical show using a prism of science fiction action adventure to tell stories, we would comment on our world today by meeting other people, alien races, alien situations such as the Doomsday Machine. All of the commentary about our present day came from out there, what we would find, because it was understood that our characters had to have come from a place, had to be enlightened enough. They were the kind of people we all wanted to be. They came from a world we hoped we would one day live in. That, my friends, is the very basis of Star Trek's appeal. That one day humanity will have overcome our petty differences, and we'll be able to work together, traveling out amongst the stars. And it's that basis of civilization that gives us the ability to go out and find and deal with what is out there. And the way that Star Trek dealt with our world today was not to show us our dystopian planet. It was not to show us all the problems that were inherent on Earth. It was to show us, using the prism of science fiction, action adventure, but we got to understand that through the allegory of dealing with what we found out there, that was the fun of it. that we were the adventurers. We had put our lives together enough that we could venture out into the cosmos on these giant ships with all of this incredible technology. But we had got our act together enough that when we went out there, we could deal with other people. We could right wrongs. We could make ourselves better. It was all illuminating for the audience at home watching because it was understood. It was baked into the premise of the show. Baked into the premise of the show that humanity was okay. We had created a federation. I mean, I know the federation wasn't there in 1966. That developed as we watched the show. But that was always the case. Now, that is not to say that you didn't see certain Starfleet officers go off the rails. You did. But they went off the rails out there. They weren't screwing up back home. Back home, humanity was still okay. The cradle of civilization had been squared away. And that was inherently one of the unstated appeals. People talk about the optimism of Star Trek. But what was the optimism of Star Trek? The very basic underlying principles of that optimism was that we back home on Earth were okay. Vulcan was okay. Alpha Centauri was okay. The Tellarites, the Andorians, we were all working together. Now, that's not to say that the Tellarites weren't a big pain in the ass. That's not to say the Andorians might not be scheming. But despite our differences, we put something together. We put a coalition, the United Federation of Planets. And it was that positivity that was baked in to every episode of Star Trek. Since the advent, Star Trek 09, that has been taken out of Star Trek. It has been removed, ladies and gentlemen. Something is always rotten in Denmark when it comes to Star Trek nowadays, because unfortunately, Star Trek is now being influenced by everything but Star Trek 09. What was its biggest influence? Star Wars. Yep, that's right. A galaxy that fell to an empire when they gave democracy away or whatever. That was the influence. So the fundamental missing principle of Star Trek is our optimistic future that all Star Trek springs from. All of it. All of it. And when I watched an episode that starred two little kids, children of Mars, by the way, Star Trek's never really been about children, and I understand people are going to say, okay, Rob, we've seen kids before fighting. We saw them fighting, in Yesteryear, the animated episode Yesteryear. The one episode of the original series, I think, or the animated series that even Gene Roddenberry thought was canonical, Yesteryear. Of course, we had kids beating up a young Spock, Vulcan kids, no less. Now, I understand that. It was done for Saturday morning television, so you have to make sure you know your audience. And your audience, the kids are going to get in fights. But what we saw last night, that show that was, I understand everybody, it's the most cynical. Let's talk about bullying. Let's talk about, here's the thing. When Star Trek makes a point, when it made a point, it did so through the prism of going out there and finding the aliens. Like one of my favorite episodes, I think one of the best episodes of the original series that has become more relevant than ever before, is an episode called, from the first season, A Taste of Armageddon. And as many people remember, A Taste of Armageddon was about two warring planets, Ameniar and Vendikar. And they had been fighting a war for a very, very, very long time. And they had come up with a novel solution. They'd come up with a novel solution. Rather than destroy, come on, Tallulah, rather than destroy their planets and their population, their great cities and everything, they decided to fight a virtual war instead with computers, like a video game. They had, let's call it AI. They probably weren't calling it AI. Why is Tallulah barking? Here I was in the middle of my reverie, and Tallulah wants a treat, which I'll give her one because I'm a well-trained human. So here you go. Here's one for you, and here's one for you, guys and girls. Now let me talk. So in this episode, this civilization has figured out a way to fight a clean war. A war where the computers figure out what places were hit, and the people that live in this civilization, if they were in a zone that is declared a blast zone, instead of actually blowing anything up, you basically get a piece in the mail, or I don't know how they did it back on Aminiar, but you were notified that, oh, sorry, you're a casualty, and you have to report to a disintegration booth. You walk in and you're disintegrated. Poof! You're destroyed. You're wiped free from existence. Now, and by doing this, and this happened on both sides, the computers, the AIs, the virtual war that was being fought prevented the civilization from being completely destroyed. That episode that came out in 1966 is just as relevant today. It's just as relevant today. Now, the story was not about Aminiar and Vendikar. It was a story about war that was supposed to apply to us today. But because we were looking at it on other planets, it was easier to accept the whole idea that people were fighting. I mean, nowadays you tell people we're going to fight a virtual war, but real people have to be disintegrated. We're still there. 50 years later, that episode, 53 years later, or 54 years later, that episode still works. Still works today because it's allegorical. You still get the enjoyment, the chewy goodness of a great science fiction action adventure story. But humanity, we are the people, we get to be mortified because we've solved our problems on Earth, which gives us the ability to judge. We're the ones that are like, that's bad. And against the Prime Directive, James Kirk, Mr. Spock, they basically destroy the computers and they say, look, now you've got real war. Real war is messy. It's full of death and destruction, and it ruins lives and it ruins civilizations. You don't want that, so figure your shit out. The civilization, Aminiar and Vendikar, become so complacent and so used to their normal everyday occurrence that they allowed people, hey man, we might be at war forever. Like Joe Haldeman wrote about the forever war. This might be a forever war. But it's okay. We figured out a way to live with it. To live with war. That's a great episode of Star Trek. Not a lot of people talk about it as being in the top 10. I think it's definitely in the top 10. That's why they made a photo novel of it. But anyway, what I saw last night, the episode ends with another 9/11 attack, a 9/11-esque attack against the Utopia Planitia shipyards, where thousands of people were killed, by synths. So whether it's going to be, Noonien Sung's technology, Borg technology, whatever, and this is supposed to set up the idea of Captain Picard coming back. And of course, Patrick Stewart is commenting. Admiral Picard commented on the disaster. Everything that we've seen of modern Star Trek so far. Section 31, which was introduced later, but there's all the entire underpinning of the optimism of where humanity stood in the cosmos when Star Trek was created has been chipped away at, if not completely destroyed, by the last 10 years of Star Trek. Why? Because that's what everybody else is doing. You know what? Hey, if it's not Babylon 5, where you're talking about different Earth forces in the wake of what happened with the Shadow War, what was the next thing that happened? Corruption back at home, and look at The Expanse, which I love the political intrigue between the Belters, Mars, and Earth. It's great stuff. It's great stuff. Love it. But that's not Star Trek. And, there's synths. I'm like, oh, really? So that's where they're going to go with it. That's where they're going to go with that technology. They're going to go where we've seen it go. I mean, hey, we got Control, which was basically Skynet already. I mean, everything that we've seen, all of these overarching storylines, we're going to get a destroyed Federation. And apparently the seeds of the Federation's destruction are going to be planted within Picard. I was somebody that tells people, I liked The Last Jedi. I enjoyed what they did with Luke. But I understand why people don't like that. Because over here in the Star Trek end of the pool, for the last 10 years, I've watched the very basis, the presupposition of humanity solving its problems as the basis. That is the beginning of Star Trek. That's where it starts. And now what they're doing is all of their storytelling, this entire Picard series. Here's the thing. Patrick Stewart, Jean-Luc Picard's character, represented probably, in terms of one character representing where humanity had come, it was Patrick Stewart's Jean-Luc Picard. I mean, basically, the original series, where you're still out on the frontier. Gene Roddenberry famously said Star Trek is a wagon train to the stars, very much analogous to the Western. And a lot of it was coming out of the idea of Kennedy's Camelot White House. And a lot of people would say, yes, it's American imperialism in space. I understand that, and there's probably an argument to be made. But ultimately, it really was about us banding together and getting over our problems. And when people, if you looked at it, there was a lot of interpersonal difficulties. Look what happened when Spock was undergoing Pon farr, the blood fever. He's throwing a plomeek soup out of his, the poor Nurse Chapel made him, out of his quarters. And what do we see? We see Kirk and Spock, their friendship allows them to confront one another and deal with difficult subjects, and get through it, because the best impulses of humanity and alien races are shown on Star Trek. That's why I've always said great Star Trek doesn't have villains. Great Star Trek has antagonists, and that's different. But what did we get? What did we get in the last 3 Star Trek feature films? It's villains. Villains. And maybe even Idris Elba's villain could have been considered a tragic villain. Maybe he was just an antagonist. But really, again, it was more corruption of Earth. Corruption of Starfleet. Peter Weller. It's all the worst impulses. Even James T. Kirk, shown as a little kid. He was a bad kid. Stole vintage cars, drove them off cliffs. He couldn't deal with his father. I mean, what they have done is this idea, Star Trek has been completely turned into something of the modern age. Now, as many people know, Patrick Stewart, when he was involved in the development of stories for new Star Trek, we got a lot of what was going on in Insurrection. Again, read Michael Pillar's book. Nemesis, hey, let's go off-roading. You know, that's fine. But Patrick Stewart is a man of the theater. And what is more fun for an actor to play? A character that represents what humanity could evolve into, like Jean-Luc Picard, a statesman, a philosopher, a historian, an archaeologist, a captain, somebody who's inherently good. No, that's not fun. Not when you're playing Hamlet or whoever. All the conflicted characters, the canon of Shakespeare. That's what actors can really sink their teeth into, and I get it. Jean-Luc Picard did not actually, it was not a character that showed a lot of growth, because Jean-Luc Picard was the evolution of what all of us, I think, hoped that we would all become one day. That's why everybody loves Captain Picard and loves Patrick Stewart, because that character embodies what we would hope humanity would definitely evolve into. He was all of our fathers, all of our leaders, and he wasn't as, say, threatening as James Kirk. You know, he was somebody that if he meets a pretty girl, he would rather perhaps talk to her than, do anything else, which is now in this day and age threatening. But in taking away, now what we saw last night, we're going into this new Picard series. Romulus has been destroyed. The Hobus Star exploded. We have Borg technology running rampant. Romulans. I don't even know what. I'm speculating. We now know that there's renegade synths out there. Call them replicants, call them Cylons, call them whatever you want. Throw it into the same crazy AI that wanted to exterminate humanity. You know what's really interesting is if you look at the great episodes of Star Trek, the Doomsday Machine. The Doomsday Machine was not a machine that was built on Earth for some monstrous purpose by some evil faction. No, it came from somewhere else out there. We don't know where it came from. But the whole point of that episode is, if humanity has a opportunity, why don't we not build a doomsday machine? Of course, they equated it to nuclear weapons, which, hey, whatever can blow up your planet can blow up your planet. But that's why Star Trek is fun. That's why it was fun to watch. That's why I was attracted to it, because you learn lessons, but somebody doesn't have to preach to you and tell you about the dangers of nuclear weapons. We get to see the ravages of the doomsday machine, which is much cooler. When you see a wrecked starship and a broken man. Now, yeah, Commodore Decker beamed his crew down. He did something dumb. He didn't know. But that's the whole thing. Star Trek wasn't about shying away from human emotion or showing human beings that were perfect, because they weren't. But they were imperfect out there, out in the final frontier. What wasn't imperfect was our civilization back home on Earth. Sure, there was bureaucracy. There was functionaries. We saw Trouble with Tribbles, Nils Barris. He was a dick. It's not like everybody was kumbaya time. It wasn't like that. But there were people out there that and of course, Richard Daystrom, we saw human hubris all the time. It wasn't that people were perfect. They weren't. But and people are never perfect. And Star Trek was all about that. It showed us our own fallibilities, again, through the prism of a science fiction action adventure television hour. That's what it did. But now, what they're doing is they're taking cues. Anybody can do dystopia. Anybody. It's really easy to show a robot uprising or blowing up the Utopia Planitia shipyards. Why do they have to blow up? Literally, as they have moved on in the past 10 years, all they do is blow shit up. Seriously. I mean, blow up the Enterprise. Blow up San Francisco. Blow up Vulcan. Destroy Romulus. Have a war with the Klingons. In the original series, when the Klingons are introduced in Errand of Mercy, a war is about to break out over Organia, which is a disputed planet. They're ready to start shooting at each other. The Klingons and the Federation are ready to start fighting. They're going to fight it out. They want to fight it out. They really do. Kirk wants to go to war against the Klingons. And what happens at the end of that episode? Well, the Organians reveal themselves. And they're like, not on our watch, boys. Freeze all the controls on both sides. And what happens? What have you watched over the course of that episode? You know what you've watched? You've watched Kor, the Klingon commander, leader of the garrison that's on Organia, and Kirk interact with one another. They admire one another. Kor has the greatest mustache to twirl of any villain in TV history, but does he? No. He's shown as being not a villain, but an antagonist. And that's much harder to write. You need to be intelligent and multifaceted to write that kind of a character. And what happens at the end of that episode? These two men have reluctantly learned to respect, and dare I say it, like one another. And the two of them get angry. They're on the same side against the Organians at the end, and they're angry they don't get to fight this war for a moment. But then at the end, what does Kor do? What does Kor say to Kirk in one of the great Star Trek moments I don't think we brought up on the 51 greatest Star Trek moments in history on the Inglorious Treksperts podcast? He thinks about it. He smiles broadly, and there's not going to be a war. But Kor says, if there was a war, I'm paraphrasing there, what Kor says, it would have been glorious. Gives me that big grin. And that's how the episode ends. And what do we see? We even saw Kirk and Spock blowing shit up. That's Star Trek. That's what Star Trek was all about. And even when it became even more dire, same season, first season of Star Trek, I feel like everybody should be forced to sit down and watch all of these episodes, because it's clear to me that the people that have been responsible for modern Star Trek, the last thing they're watching is Star Trek episodes. If they had watched Deep Space Nine and they understood the appeal of Section 31, we would not have got this dumbed down. I mean, think about it. What have we gotten from Star Trek? We've got the mirror universe. We've had torture, rape, cannibalism. I mean, it's unbelievable, because fundamentally, the people that are making Star Trek now do not believe in the very premise of Star Trek, which is that mankind gets its act together before it goes out and conquers the cosmos. Because you know what? Who can believe in that anymore? And better yet, it's harder. It's harder to come up with decent stories when you're coming at it from that perspective. And that, my friends, is the one major underlying foundational flaw in all of modern Star Trek. They have forgotten humanity's place in the cosmos. And you know what? What are they going to do? What do they do to Captain Picard? The person that most... And why did they do it? Because Patrick Stewart wants to play it that way. I get it. He was in Logan. You know, Professor X is a very similar character to Captain Picard. And you know what do? You subvert him in Logan. You give an actor something to play. Angst. Hamlet. You know, every actor wants to play that. That's why actors are never the best people to define where a franchise is going to go. Because their interests are diametrically opposed, usually, to where the story is going. Now, I'm not saying that actors shouldn't be allowed to contribute. Absolutely they should. I mean, I love Dances with Wolves and Braveheart. Both movies that were directed by actors, directed by their stars. I have no problem with that. But I don't always think that actors, when they're allowed to define where characters are going. Patrick Stewart has done that. Insurrection, Nemesis, and now Picard. And I think in doing that, you always lose the essence of what appealed to people most of all. And I just, it is irksome. And when I was watching last night's Short Trek, which is a literally two little girls, let's address bullying. Let's address how do we get along with one another. Oh, I know, not through the prism of a science fiction action adventure. Let's put it in a fantasy context. Let's literally have two girls beating on each other in school. Because, gosh, there's no better way to do that. I mean, I watched this and I said, really? This is what Star Trek has become? And then at the end, you're going to, let's kill their parents in a 9/11 incident brought on by apparently synthetics. You know, what would have been really interesting is if you saw, like, I don't know how they're going to deal with it. Maybe they deal with it. I don't know. But the idea that I guarantee you that Measure of a Man, the second season episode of Next Generation, Measure of a Man, where once again Jean-Luc Picard argues for the rights of Data to be a person, is the personage of Data is argued by Jean-Luc Picard. I'm sure that it's all been subverted because, gosh, you know, coming up with rogue. Let's make this more like Battlestar Galactica. I watched Ex Machina and Blade Runner 2049 and Blade Runner. You know, it's all about artificial people revolting against. We already went through that. We already dealt with that beautifully, eloquently. It's done. They figured it out. You know, artificial people like Data 30 years before. You get rights. Starfleet can't do that. You know, it's you these people are sentient beings under the law. That's like but no, I know they're going to the synths attacked. They attacked human beings. Wow, that's original. You know, way to subvert a trope. Not. Anyway, I know I'm supposed to be the Prince of Positivity. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say about this particular subject. But you know, I actually had an article I was going to read about this, and I totally forgot that I did. Why don't I read it anyway? Because this was in Gizmodo today. This article. Coming into this is by, of course, James Whitbrook. Coming into this season of Short Treks, Children of Mars was teased as one of the two precursors to the events of Star Trek Picard. It is not a factual indicator of what's to come or some grand necessary setup for the plot Jean-Luc and his friends will tackle. but it does give us a tonal insight into the dark times ahead and the light that must endure it. Not a lot actually happens in Children of Mars. It's a simple tale of two young school children, Kima and Lil, and we only learn the absolute minimum about them. We know their names, we know that they attend school together, we know that their parents both work at Federation outlets on Mars. Kima's mother, whom she shares a tender relationship with, works at Utopia Planitia, a major construction dry dock for Starfleet vessels, while Lil's father, who she is distant with, is a systems advisor on the planet's orbital facilities. We know that, because of this, they both live relatively independent lives. Hey, they're latchkey kids. All right. We also learn over the course of the short's runtime, it may be one of the shortest, if not the shortest, of the short treks so far, that they basically hate each other. Lil, never outright stated as to why, but presumably acting out a lingering discomfort over her relationship with her father. Really? A daughter's relationship with her father. This is some really compelling, this is really boundary-pushing writing. Repeatedly and cruelly bullies Kima. She makes her late for school, pushes her around, and gets her in trouble in classes. Kima retaliates in turn more aggressively as the short progresses, almost in the style of a music video. Dialogue almost entirely replaced by Peter Gabriel's haunting cover of David Bowie and Brian Eno's Heroes. Wow, let's use 20th century music for a 24th century show. Because you know what? Rather than perhaps extrapolate, what would kids be listening to, or what could we hear in the 24th century that might be, different than modern pop music? Until eventually, when you heard modern music on Star Trek, it was the guy who composed it, Flint Brahms. He was Brahms, so it made sense. I don't think David Bowie is alive in the 24th century. Anyway, until eventually, the two duke it out in a brutal hallway fight, egged on by their schoolmates. Really? Like, I get it. I understand. Egged on by their schoolmates. Wouldn't it have been interesting if it was one of the schoolmates that stopped the fight, like from the get-go, stopped it? Something happened. Something unexpected. Something that you haven't seen in movies and television forever. Something unique to Star Trek. Turns out, even in an idealized utopia, kids can still be nasty little jerks to each other. Yes, of course. You know why? Because it's harder to do something unique and interesting where kids do something. I understand that's not the story they're telling. They've got 8 minutes, so let's tell the most simple, easy to understand story that we've seen a million different times in however many sitcoms or hour-long dramas. I think I saw 2 kids get in a fight in the Brady Bunch, or 8 is enough. But whatever. Hey, this is modern Star Trek. This is the laziest, most poorly written science fiction show ever. Ever. Well, we'll see. Turns out, even in an idealized utopia, kids can still be nasty jerks to each other. And the more things change, the more they stay the same. Whoo-hoo, that's some science fiction for you. There's something fascinating in the presentation of this stark repudiation of Star Trek's utopian society. Is there? I would say that takes the easy way out. You know what the hard way out is? It's to show how Star Trek's utopian civilization endures while our world today is spinning on its crazy course. That was the funny thing. The original Star Trek was written in the height of the Vietnam War. Civil rights movement, a civilization that had just been given the birth control pill, the beginnings of free love. There was so much going on. There was so much societal tumult. Kennedy had been assassinated. Martin Luther King got assassinated. Bobby Kennedy got assassinated. But did Star Trek go dark? No, it did not. That's why Star Trek endures now. But this, anyway, let me go on. Sorry. Children tearing into each other isn't just unlike anything we've seen in Star Trek from an aesthetic point of view. Maybe Star Trek Beyond's Beastie Boys tracked heroic climax is the closest comparison, but in its visceral nature. We've always been told that the galaxy of Star Trek is one of higher ideals, of loftier values we assume would be instilled in children from a young age, just as we've seen in adorably mature kids across a spectrum of ages, from tykes like Voyager's Naomi Wildman to teens like TNG's Will Crusher and Deep Space Nine's Will Crusher. Deep Space Nine's Jake Sisko. And yet, here we are. By the way, it says Will Crusher. I know it's Wesley. Will. Anyway. And yet, here we are. These two girls, one human, one alien, biting and choking and bloodying each other as a raucous crowd of their fellows cheer. Yeah, I get that. That's where we're at right now. That's where we're at in this society right now. But Star Trek should do better. Show us something better. Show us something that's interesting and unique and the equivalent of something like that. What pulls Kima and Lil out of this bitter conflict, aside from literally two school staff members wrenching them apart, is where the short becomes a more informationally direct prequel to Picard, as the two children, separated by their principal and awaiting punishment, glare at each other across the school lobby. A news report blares out. Mars has been attacked by a fleet of rogue ships. The red planet burns even redder as bombs and phaser fire tear its surface apart. Thousands are dead, Kima and Lil's parents likely among them, as the Federation races to respond to an attack basically right on their doorstep at the heart of one of Starfleet's most vital industries. A familiar face is included in the reports, Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, who can only express his dismay at the devastating horror. And in witnessing that face, in witnessing the horror themselves as their minds race back to what is likely now their final conversations with their parents, a tearful Kima and Lil reach out their hands to each other, all the hate between them fading away as they're unified by grief and tragedy. Yes, we do learn things here that are likely important to the setup of Star Trek Picard. The Mars attack is conducted by rogue synths, suggesting some interesting debates about conflict about androids, and perhaps even liberated Borg in the late 24th century Federation. By the way, all conversations we had 30 fucking years ago in Next Generation. You know? This is not new. Oh, but hey, we've seen it in other science fiction movies. Like, let's go back to Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica. But you know what? We haven't done it on Star Trek yet, and God forbid we should come up with some new ideas. This nightmare is also likely one of several, including the impending destruction of Romulus, that pushes Picard to retire from duty. But it's in Kima and Lil's bittersweet unity that we perhaps learn the most about what we should expect coming into Star Trek Picard. This is not the ideal utopia we last saw Picard and his crew boldly going about in during the Next Generation and its movie sequels. It's not even the one bruised by horrifying conflicts like the Dominion War in Deep Space Nine. It is a tired world, a dismayed one, buffeted by repeated attacks on its loftiest values, one that, as Patrick Stewart has made clear repeatedly going into Picard, perhaps more realistically portrays a reflection of our own likewise buffeted present. And yet, in that darker, harsher world, there's still hope. Hope that differences can be put aside, that darkness that threatens to lay these mightiest of ideals low can be confronted by the simple act of reaching out, of standing together on a united front. I got news for you people. Yes, that's what Star Trek was doing for 40 years until it was taken over in 2007. Literally 40 years after it had debuted. I mean, this is not something new, but you know how you do that? You show that out in the prism of a science fiction, fantasy, action, adventure context. Bring it home to Earth. Hey, let's blackmail a scientist into blowing up some Federation outpost in London. Whatever. Because God forbid we use our own creativity and create science fiction. Let's bring it home. We've seen, hey, you know what? They did it on 24. They're doing it on Jack Ryan. Let's bring it all home. Let's do something that you've seen before 1,000,000 times on other shows. Star Trek should be better than that. The whole point is nobody really wants to see 24th century Earth taken apart. What's interesting about the Dominion War, people go, "What? Oh, Rob, what about Deep Space Nine?" That Earth held it together. Held it together in the face of overwhelming odds. Homefront, if you watch that, Deep Space Nine, great episode. You know how many changelings are on Earth that caused all of this turmoil? That Earth could be less than 6 people. Less than 6 changelings could completely disrupt the Federation way of life. But you know what? The message there was you have to be ever vigilant. And the threat came from out there. It came from outside. Not something that we'd created internally or whatever. Anyway. If you come to Children of Mars looking for an info dump precursor to Star Trek Picard, you may find yourself left cold. Oh, I wasn't left cold. I know exactly what they're doing. I see exactly where they're going to take this show now. Now, I'm going to refrain prejudging it. But based on this, based on where they're going with this, I'm like, huh. So basically, you haven't really figured out a very new and unique and interesting way to take the Star Trek universe. What you're doing now is you're going where lots of other people that aren't Star Trek have gone before you, and not very creatively at that. It tells us everything we really need to know about the state of the Federation, the state of Picard himself, to prepare us for a dark time and the idealism needed to combat it. As if this is something that... Anyway. So, now I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to now see what you guys all have to say. Because, I don't want to... This is the only thing that gets me angry. It is the only thing that gets me angry. Because I've been watching the degradation of Star Trek for 10 years. 20% of my life. And it's like... I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Let's turn Star Trek into everything except Star Trek. And it's funny. It's like people don't know. Do you forget all of the heady things? I mean, a civilization like the war between Aminiar and Vendikar, when you're fighting a proxy war via a computer and people are willingly stepping into disintegration booths. You don't think that's dark enough? Whole population centers. Oh, your city's gone. I need 500,000 people to report to disintegration booths by this time. There's interesting ways. There's so many current technologies and things that we could be exploring through the prism of a great science fiction action adventure show, like what Star Trek is supposed to be. Oh, but no, we're going to get a Lower Deck show about office politics in space. Now we're going to get, hey, 9/11 again and again and again. Ooh, evil AIs. What's with the evil AIs, man? Why is it that we have to, what about things like Her? I mean, it's so easy to go negative. It's harder to go positive. And one of the things about Star Trek for me, it always inspired me. I was always inspired by Star Trek. The last 10 years, not so much. Not so much. It's irksome. Anyway, hey man, it's Friday. Perhaps some would say, Rob, you were more chilled out when you drank more Jameson in your life, and that's true. That's true. But I'll tell you something else. To be honest, on a personal note, Elizabeth's 19-year-old daughter, Zoe Trope, had a seizure yesterday and has been in the hospital for the last 2 days. She had tests. She's okay. Perhaps I was at the hospital right before I came on the show. Perhaps that has something to do with it. Anyway. Ooh, the Star Trek thing, it just, makes me mad. And by the way, I don't want to take away from anyone's enjoyment of modern Star Trek. I do not. I do not. Because why would I want to do that? I'm just speaking about how I feel. Anyway, Timbulus Spider-Monk is here. Tim says, hey, Robberino, is there a statue or hot toy that they've never made that you have always wanted? I'd love a 6-scale Alan Moore figure or a Kotobukiya Faye Valentine statue to go along with the Spike Spiegel they brought out. Or at least an Ein. That's a really good question. I've wanted hot toys. They did Ripley from Alien. I wish they would do the rest of the Nostromo crew. They probably won't because, why would you want to buy, sweaty dudes in work clothes? But I would love to get the crew of the Nostromo. I really wish somebody would I would love to get Logan and Jessica, 6-scale figures of Logan and Jessica. I want to get hot toys of Alex and his 3 droogs, Pete, Georgie, and Dim. I don't think they're going to do that. Although Mezco, other people are coming out. Obviously, the Kubrick estate had tightened up over the last few years, so we can get model kits and action figures of things that we wanted. There's a lot of things that I would like to get that haven't been made. But those are some of them. Tim. So indeed, boy, I noticed that there's been a lot of subscribers lately. They're probably like, who is this guy? Normally Rob's all happy-go-lucky and having a good time. What's with him today? What's with me today is that Star Trek sucks. It sucked for 10 years, man. And it really bothers me. Why? Why, people? Anyway, Willow Yang says, I've just watched part 1 of Voyager's Year of Hell. Why do they put black bars on the sides of the screen? I don't like how they're cutting off part of the picture. Grumble, grumble. Well, Willow, I don't believe they are cutting off part of the picture. As you know, Star Trek The Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, and the original series were all shot in the 4:3 aspect ratio. So if you're watching on a widescreen TV, those black bars are filling out the screen because it was not 16:9 or 1:7:9:1. It's 4:3, so those black bands, unless they do what BBC America did, they'd stretch and distort the image. So if you're seeing it with black bands on the left and right side of the screen, not the top and bottom, you're actually seeing the entire image. There is no more image. But that's a good question. Many people ask that and want to know what is up. David Lutz says, Rob, I heard about this right before I went on. David Lutz says, Rob, we lost Neil Peart of Rush, their drummer. Since no one is even discussing it, could you possibly mention it to get the word out? Thanks for being so amazing. I don't know. I have a lot of friends. Ben Rabb, who did the comic Living in Infamy for me. Also with Derek Hughes, they were on Arrow this season. They're EPs and writers on Arrow. Ben Rabb is one of the biggest Rush fans in the world. My friend Eric Wallace, who's coincidentally is running Flash this year, is a huge Rush fan. I think Rush is one of the great rock bands. I mean, when I was growing up, who didn't love Rush? And if you ever saw I Love You Man, the subplot of the characters, they met and they bonded over Rush was amazing. And Neil Peart passed away. He was fighting cancer. And I believe he was fighting it for the last 3 years. So if you are a Rush fan, I think I'll have to go listen to something like Permanent Waves, maybe. I don't know. Just listen to some Rush and think about Neil Peart. There's also a great documentary. I don't know if it's on Netflix or if I saw it on Amazon. There's a great documentary about Rush. I don't know the name of it, but I saw it in the last 2 years, and it's really good, so check that out. Mukbang reviews. By the way, another thing about just if I can just get it all out there, in that fucking dumb Short Treks episode, they show the Utopia Planitia shipyards with Discovery-era ships there. 100-year-old ships. Why did they not? Star Trek shows in the Berman era would show us older starships. You got a sense of Star Trek history. But what, did they not want to pay for new models? I mean, somebody... I saw Samuel Cockings from over at Trek Yards. He's like, why don't you call up Eagle Moss? They've got digital models of all the ships. Why couldn't you throw one of those in? And you watch this, add insult to injury. I'm like, what? The most expensive science fiction television show ever made can't afford 24th century ship models? You're showing us those garbage ships you made for Discovery? No offense to anyone who designed them, but those designs are horrible. And why would they have them 100 years from now? But anyway, I get it. Hey, why pay for new models? Why pay any attention to the mythology of your own fucking show? Mukbang Reviews says, I would like to know the mechanics of how you or anyone misses a super chat or tip. It happens. You're forgiven. No worries. Today's official Prince song is Peach. Thank you. You know what? I just don't think I can sing Prince today. I think it would be disrespectful. But Peach is, in fact, a great Prince song. And I think all of you... Did I miss a super chat? I don't know. It's if I did, I apologize. I don't mean to do that. I'm actually looking, I'm seeing all of them. Jamie Cruz is here. Voting by not spending dollars on CBS All Access isn't helping. What else can we do to voice our discontent to these bozos? Letter campaign? What else? Listen, here's the thing. There's no incentive for them to change what they're doing because they're getting paid. They don't even have to deal with ratings. They just have to deal with CBS All Access. And you know what? Now that CBS and Viacom are back together, there's even less pressure. And there are people, let's face it, that like the show. I mean, I'm always inevitably watch the chat for this chat. I mean, watch the chats, watch the comments section underneath this chat on YouTube. Somebody will say, Rob, you're just out of touch. You're just out of touch. You're just an old man shouting on his lawn. Well, maybe that's true. But there's a reason why Star Trek endures for as long as it does. And I think ultimately the reason is because, yes, it is optimistic, but it's very baseline. Like I said, its baseline is that humanity will get over itself and is able to move out amongst the stars. We are not going to succumb to climate change, or we're not going to blow up our planet. We're not going to find ourselves in some apocalyptic war, brought on by hawks that I don't know what they want to do. We're going to overcome all of that. And remember, Star Trek did suffer the post-atomic horror, as we found out in Encounter at Farpoint. So, yeah. Mark Chure says, the Earth has lost the greatest drummer who has ever lived. Rest in peace, Neil Peart. By the way, I did go and tweet this out before I went on the show. Loquacious Primate sent a $2 super chat. Voyager also did AI rights with the rogue holograms. Yes, they did. As a matter of fact, there's more than one episode that deals with that, and I mean, even Deep Space Nine. Remember the episode where they find a civilization that's all holograms? This has already been dealt with. But you know what? Those idiots haven't watched. Do you think that writing staff sat down and watched these 700 plus episodes of Star Trek that exist? No, they don't. Why would you? Why would they? Somebody reads a Wikipedia article. Because what's interesting about what you're talking about is all of the ways that they dealt with this already in Star Trek were way more interesting than rogue synths. Oh my God, fighting for their rights. Let's go to the Tyrell Corporation, and I want my more life, father or fucker, depending on which version of Blade Runner you're watching, right? Dieter Bastian says, Rob, setting me straight and focused again about what made Star Trek great in the first place will now make it even harder with starting Star Trek Discovery Season 2 or Picard. Wait till you, Dieter from Deutschland. By the way, I loved your video. Elizabeth and I have been quoting it. Shiny, Rob. By the way, I love it. For those of you who, Dieter Bastian sent me a video, and he, of course, had to show the Star Trek Season 2 Blu-ray, Star Trek Discovery Season 2 Blu-rays, and he taunted me. But I encourage all of you to send me videos of yourselves, and we're gonna be stepping up that part of the show. So, but I can only do it if you help. So, videos that you guys send me, it's guys, girls, gentle being, whoever. You don't have to, but it's always fun to see. Oh, whoops. See what happens? Wow, I totally forgot that. I'm sorry. You know what? I just left that up for effect. I meant to do that. Swear to God. So it was like a podcast for a while. See, now you know that was actually a backdoor pilot for the Robservations podcast. Thanks, by the way, for mentioning that, Roberto. Roberto Suarez from Portland, Oregon. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Thank you for that. Roberto Suarez says, also, isn't Mars terraformed by the time of the Next Generation? Well, you'd think. By the way, that's a very good point. And, of course, if I might, there is a series of science fiction novels that you might want to read. Actually, I would encourage the entire writing staff of modern Star Trek to sit down and please read Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy. Red Mars, Blue Mars, and Green Mars. Or actually, it's Red Mars, Green Mars, Blue Mars. Read that trilogy. You might learn something you can apply to Star Trek. By the way, thanks. I would have just kept talking, but at least IO9 or Gizmodo got a good plug today. Brandon Valenzuela says, you like The Last Jedi, but you don't like what's happened to Star Trek. I hate The Last Jedi, and I actually like the recent Star Trek movies. Looks like we're even, Rob. Well, I don't think it's about getting even. Here's the thing. Nobody should ever, just because I don't like something, it should never affect what you do like. Don't ever let somebody tell you that what you like is wrong. If you like something, you like it. And you know what? It's great to like things. I like tons of stuff. There's so many things that I like. And I don't let anybody, even me, you know what? If you want to say that guy, I've liked the last 3 Star Trek movies. By God, you should like them. There's no reason. They're certainly well made, and everybody's trying really hard. And I don't want to ever. I don't want anybody to not like things, because that's bad. Life is about liking things, and you should be defined by the things that you love, whether it's people, whether it's your books, whether it's your pets, whether it's history, whatever it is you love. Pursue that, because there's so much in our lives to love. There's so much great stuff. There's so much awesomeness, ladies and gentlemen. I am literally surrounded by a room full of stuff that makes me happy. Now, people might say, well, Rob, that's because you're a materialist. Well, you know what? It's not so much material things. It's the ideas. And you know what all this is? You know what all this is that I've surrounded myself with? It's the culmination of the endeavors of other talented, creative people. That's what I choose to surround myself with. I am delighted. Anybody will tell you, anybody that knows me will tell you that I am always very enthusiastic about what other people are doing. I love it when people are making things. I love it when people are doing things. That's what life is all about. Is creating things. When you're creating something that didn't exist, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be the best thing, but it's something that if you create something, no matter what it is, that means you've done something that's unique. In the entire infinitude, go back to Watchmen. The reason Dr. Manhattan in the Watchmen comics decides to help humanity, he decides to go back to Earth, is because he realizes how miraculous it is in the infinitude of the universe, how each and every single human being who exists is an extraordinary, as he calls it, a thermodynamic miracle. And if that person, no matter who you are, it doesn't matter how old you are, if that thermodynamic miracle creates something, and by definition, whatever it is you create, whether it's a drawing on paper, it didn't exist before, it could never have existed if you didn't exist. So think about it. Think about acts of creation and how miraculous they really are. And they are miraculous. So that's kind of how I choose to live my life. But it's I don't think Last Jedi is a perfect film. And the only thing, because as people know, I didn't like The Force Awakens much at all. But one of the things I did like was at the end, I think, did I like where Luke was? No, but I did like the end of it. Like I said, it was the most baller Jedi move ever to show up in a fight you're not even actually at. I did like that. But yes, I think, and I've said this before, it was an unbelievable mistake to never put our main characters together, our classic characters together, nor show them at the height of their powers kicking ass. Because that's what everybody wanted to see. You wanted to see Han, Luke, Leia, R2, Chewie, C-3PO. You wanted to see them, give them a golden age that they had fought for. We should have seen the height of the new republic that they had created, and then you destroy it, because that's what Star Wars is all about. But we didn't get that. Brandon Valenzuela also says, the next Star Trek movie should have them run into another space ribbon and wipe out the entire timeline. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately not. It's funny. I'm glad. The one good thing about what's happened with modern Star Trek is, like, all of the Akutas, like the Star Trek encyclopedias and all of my reference material, I don't have to watch anybody go back and try and retcon what they've done in Discovery and stick it into these books. I mean, the books that have come out since, like, I really like, I love what Eagle Moss is doing. In the olden days, I would have bought every Eagle Moss model, every single one, but cooler heads prevail, and I don't. But how can you not want, no, it's over there. It's right there. Space Dock. I love Space Dock. And you know what's actually there's it's hard. There's V'ger and there's Space Dock. You got to have those, right? I have to have those. I mean, I don't have to, but I like them. I just haven't migrated to over there where the Star Trek stuff is. But thank you, Brandon. Brad Hoyt says, wondering what you thought of Star Trek Continues. Star Trek Continues is, of course, the fan film series that actually my good buddy Jeff Bond actually appeared in. Or was it Larry Nemeczek? I think he was in Star Trek Continues. No, Star Trek, The New Voyages. But Star Trek Continues was Vic Mignogna playing Captain Kirk. And I think, I have to say, that I thought Star Trek Continues was pretty great. I mean, as far as they nailed the production was very well done. I really, really liked the episodes. I thought that the only shortcomings for me was some of the scripts, some of the writing, and that's true of everything. And to use one example that I've talked about before, they did a Mirror episode, and the Mirror episode they did begins with they redo the end of Mirror, which is one of my favorite. I think it's called The Fairest of Them All is the name of their episode. And I love Mirror is one of my favorite Star Trek episodes of all time. And at the end of that is one of my favorite Star Trek sequences and speeches of all time when Kirk is talking to Mirror Spock and trying to get him to make changes and appeals to his logic. And it's a great scene. But what I wondered about my whole life is how did the Mirror crew that was on our Enterprise, the evil USS Enterprise crew that had changed places with our crew, how did they get into the transporter to be beamed back to their own Enterprise? And the rest of the Star Trek Continues episode that deals with the Mirror Universe is all set from the Mirror Universe's perspective, which is cool. But I would have liked to have seen that episode open with the reverse. What was the conversation that Spock and Mirror Kirk were having? That would have been great to see. And I didn't understand why they didn't do that. Like, why would they replay that scene again when we've already, it's one of my favorite scenes in all of Star Trek, and they could have, but that's just a minor quibble. I thought a lot of, Lolani is another episode they did I thought was particularly good. And I really did appreciate the end of Star Trek Continues. They go back to where no one has gone before, which is the first Star Trek pilot. The first episode of modern Star Trek. That was the second Star Trek pilot, and I thought they did a great job. And it leads into, it sets the table for Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I thought it was pretty good. I liked it. I what they did technically, and I liked everybody. I've only met Vic Mignogna once. I met him at Doug Drexler's house, and I made a joke that he and I should start a Flock of Seagulls cover band, and because he kind of had. His hair was looking a little 80s. I don't think he appreciated that. But I did like Star Trek Continues very much. Mukbang is back again. She was dark. She was dark. I'm not going to sing it. She was dark. She was tan. She made me glad to be a man. She was young. She was smart. Just one glance, she stole my heart. The kind of girl. Yeah. You want to teach? She's a peach. I know. It's a great song. It's a great song. Pterodon. Wait a second. Pteranodon Media. I mispronounced that for how long did I mispronounce that? A long time. Pteranodon Media. I missed the Rob Zerker barrage on Trek Rage. On Rob. Well, you know what? You got some today. You got some Trek. You got some. I was berserking today. I really was. Anonymous sent in a tip. Thank you, Anonymous. Thanks for expressing the frustration of so many Star Trek fans. Yeah, you know what's so interesting to me is, we Star Trek fans are an accepting bunch. You know, we put up with a lot. Now, just so everyone knows, I haven't loved everything that's come out. I certainly didn't love Enterprise. I mean, Enterprise was hit and miss. I liked the first season of Voyager, and then I started railing against it. But going back, I mean, there's some good stuff in Voyager. Some of my favorite Star Trek episodes, I've talked about Blink of an Eye and Living Witness, I think are two very, very fine episodes of Star Trek. And in talking to my friends John Ottman and, of course, Voyager, Discovery co-creator and Voyager writer Brian Fuller, he told me a few episodes that he was particularly fond of. And I a couple years back, I was revisiting them, and I was like, wow, these are pretty good. It's just Voyager was very hit and miss. I thought Voyager was very hit and miss. So yeah. Anonymous, I will keep... Look, I wasn't going to do this. I wasn't going to review every episode of Picard, but I think I might. But I don't want to... Here's the thing. Everybody who tells me they watch me on these channels, these chats, tell me they like my positivity. And I, too, like my positivity. And I want to love Star Trek Picard. But where they're going is not something that I think I'm going to enjoy. And I wonder, I mean, what is the point of continuing to watch if I don't like it? I mean, I'm going to watch because obviously it is Star Trek, and I watch every episode of this, but I just shake my head. I shake my head, and it just makes me so angry. I don't know. Captain Spire sent in a super chat and says, my father built a life-size Star Trek, the original series console and bridge in our basement. I was surrounded by sci-fi from the 50s and onward. To see what Star Trek is now hurts. Well, sir, by the way, I like your avatar. I agree with you. It does hurt. And it bothers me because Star Trek was something that I've literally carried with me my whole life. And now I don't want to carry it anymore, which bothers me. I don't want to dislike Star Trek. I take no pleasure in that, like at all. Who doesn't want to like something that they love? It's very strange. I mean, I'm surrounded by Star Trek stuff all around me, and you know what? I never thought the day would come where, up until Star Trek 09, like that I wouldn't want to buy a Star Trek spaceship. Now, I've shown it on the show, so I'll admit, yes, I did buy a Revell model of the JJ Prize. I did. Started building it. I didn't have the heart to finish. I just couldn't. Anyway, there's not one ship on Star Trek Discovery. I mean, for me to not want a Star Trek spaceship of some kind from something, there's not one design on Star Trek Discovery that I have any interest in owning. Even when they tried to bring it back, Trek Yards did a really interesting... By the way, if you guys like Star Trek, you should go check out the Trek Yards channel. They do technical dives into ship designs and things like that, but they do a really, really good job. As a matter of fact, I'll recommend this to you. They did a comparison of Star Trek Discoveries and the original series D7s. Pardon me, their second D7 after they retconned their own show. But you should check that out. It's really good. I mean, as far as if you're a Star Trek fan, the Trek Yards channel is it's a deep dive. It's a rabbit hole, but it's really good. They do a really, really, really good job. Captain Spire also subscribed to my channel. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Ashley Short is here. Hi, Rob. I'm by no means a Star Trek connoisseur. However, it's always been there. I've certainly seen my fair share of episodes and movies. I thoroughly enjoyed First Contact. Picard's Ahab speech is breathtaking. What are your thoughts on First Contact? Okay. Now, I preface this by saying I think First Contact is probably the best Next Generation movie by a wide margin. But I do think it's poppycock. I mean, none of it makes any sense at all. And I what was there was really cool. I like the characterizations. The Ahab speech is great. I like the characters. I like James Cromwell. I didn't believe that he was no Glenn Corbett from Metamorphosis, but I did believe. I mean, I liked him. I liked his character, and I liked Alfre Woodard. I thought she was great, and I did like what was going on, but the plot was completely nonsensical, and that's what really bothers me when I'm watching a movie. And let's say time travel's involved. A lot of people would say, when I was watching Avengers Endgame, there might have been inconsistencies, but I wasn't thinking about it while I was watching the movie. But in First Contact, if the Borg have time travel technology, and we see that they're able to open a portal in time, why would they then not travel back in time before they came to Earth? Why not leave Borg space or in Borg space, then you go back in time and you travel to Earth where there's no impediments. There's nothing. So, and in a battle, and then this is a last ditch effort. So the Borg's plan was to travel back in time to stop First Contact. Well, when did they come up with that cockamamie scheme? Why not just go back in time? I guess they wanted to. They could have said this. Well, this was the point in time where Earth was only Earth still had something worth assimilating. You had to wait until the Earth got to this point in the 21st century before we assimilated it, because otherwise there was really nothing for us. The technology was too primitive, or something like that. The reasoning, it was just that whole plot was strange. But yeah, did it get me when the Vulcans land at the end? Sure. Did I love when they're fighting on the outside on the navigational deflector of the Enterprise? Love that. I thought it was cool. The Borg Queen, utterly ridiculous and completely goes against what the Borg were all about. But she was badass. I liked Alice Krige as the Borg Queen. Somebody asked earlier, was it Timbula? Tim? I wouldn't mind a Hot Toys figure of the Borg Queen. Hubba hubba. Who wouldn't, right? But First Contact is okay. There's a lot of fun stuff in it, but plot-wise, it's just it suffers from the same thing. The Next Generation movies were they're very strange. The scripting is quite odd, I think. Anyway, now I think it's time, ladies and gentlemen. I have letters. I have letters from you. I've got good letters, and I haven't even got to people's letters yet. So why don't I do that? Because I can, and I will. And I'm going to dip into, let's see who's here today. Who is the lucky person that, let's see, that I'll start with. You know what? I promised I would read this. I hadn't read it yet. This one comes from Jason DeWolf. And this is a good letter. It's not on topic, but it's a good letter anyway. Hi, Rob and the community. The recent letter by Stubble McShave about retelling of stories got me thinking about a different take and setting to what we usually see with zombie movies. For many years now, I have wanted a zombie movie set in the Middle Ages before all of the beneficial technology of the modern age. First of all, let me say you should check out the Korean TV series Kingdom on Netflix. One stipulation would be to have zombies be a result of evil and not a virus or whatever scientific reason. Perhaps a witch that has been disgraced by a king, a queen, a priest, after that person used her for his or her own gain, then discarded, embarrassed, or tried to kill her, causes the witch to invoke a demon that raises the dead and to wreak havoc and bring death and disease to the countryside and ultimately at a church town or the kingdom itself. Speaking of demons, how cool and creepy was the demon that Richard Mole played in The Sword and the Sorcerer? I love The Sword and the Sorcerer, directed by Albert Pune. Would love to see zombies in an old stone church, the countryside, a forest, firelit settings, and rising from graves, getting hit by spears, arrows, swords, and fire. The absolute minimal CGI only to be used, and let's keep them moving slowly to moderate with an occasional speedy one. Other stipulations would be a balance of gore, not dead or alive type, and keep it in line with a horror movie atmosphere and not a satire, with some periodic wit and real humor. Thanks, Rob, for giving us all here a unique and great outlet to revel in the imagination that stands out from the typical channel. That comes from Jay Canada. Or Jason DeWolf. Jay, I think that's a great idea. By the way, if I might recommend, it's not really period piece, but the zombies are. You have to watch Armando Diosorio's Tombs of the Blind Dead. I think there's 4 Blind Dead movies, but Tombs of the Blind Dead I think is the best. I have a box set of all the Blind Dead movies. I don't think Tombs of the Blind Dead's on Blu-ray. I think, is it Night the Scarecrow? One of the Seagulls? Night the Seagulls? But Tombs of the Blind Dead, I recommend that. But I would love to see a medieval zombie movie. I worked on Army of Darkness. I have a screen credit on Army of Darkness, and they were originally going to call Army of Darkness The Medieval Dead, which I think they should. I mean, I know why they didn't, but hey, I love that. And this letter, by the way, you should all go. I'm going to put this in the live chat here. You should all go to the Robservations website and look at this headline, because our great moderator and mayor, the Honorable Mike Bodden. Why can't I see this? What have I done? I've put it away. I've done something wrong. I was going to go put this in the live chat, and I just don't see. I think I closed. Oh, no, here it is. I found it. Mike Bodden said that he wrote this headline for this letter. So, oh, great. I just, it was going to be there. I just screwed it up. Anyway, go find this letter on the Burnettwork.net website, because his headline was good. I won't tell you what it is, but it was good. Yeah, so I would like to do that. Tombs of the Blind Dead. If you haven't seen Tombs of the Blind Dead, you should see Tombs of the Blind Dead. There's, I believe, 4 movies in the Blind Dead series. I think it's a series that needs to get, in fact, remade. I would love to see more Blind Dead movies. Who doesn't want to see more Blind Dead movies? What have I done? I keep messing things up today. I forget to switch back on my camera. That was hilarious. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, back to the letters. And there's good ones. There's good letters today. Ooh, yeah. Actually, this is really cool. For those of you who are moderator, the great Greg Smith, my old friend Greg Smith, of course, he made himself an ingot from, I'm gonna get this, and I'm gonna put this up on the live chat. He made a Beskar steel, I guess it's steel, metal, what would you call it? He made this ingot from The Mandalorian, and I am going to throw it up there on the live chat so you can see how talented our moderator actually is. Here we go. Bear with me for a moment, and I will get this, and I will be able to show it to you, and you will be able to see it. So Greg made this. Let's see if I got the right one. It's really cool, actually. And Greg is very talented. I think Greg should do a whole cosplay thing, because he's a member of the 501st. He's constantly making cool stuff. He was, of course, here it is. Check this out. He made this. Greg made this. Yes, indeed. Look at that. That looks like it's right out of The Mandalorian, ladies and gentlemen. Our own great moderator, Mr. Greg Smith, made this. What a talented chap he is. So it's great to have Greg able to do that. Isn't that cool? Like, I mean, that looks like a prop from the show. Truly amazing. Nicely done, Greg. So how neat is that? I think that's pretty cool. I also wanted to mention that our own Ian Samuels, who has been here a lot, he writes a lot of letters. He has a new column up on the site where he gives production notes and factoids. It's called the Ian Samuels Who View. Ian lost his grandmother, and he is he's not here. He's with his family and taking care of them and what they need. But I wholeheartedly recommend it. I'm throwing this in the chat right now. Here is his new regular column where he's delving into the history of Doctor Who and new Doctor Who episodes. And I highly recommend that everybody check it out, because it's pretty cool. And I want to thank Ian Samuels for becoming a regular columnist. And please comment and check it out. All right, here's something that's on point. This one comes from Dave Scarpa, an old school Star Trek fan. Rob, your Robservations on episode 313 were right on the money concerning the current state of Trek. I hope you are watching this show right now. At 56 years of age, I'm an old school fan. Not old enough to remember more than a fleeting impression of Trek when it was aired originally, but a child of the massive syndication explosion of Trek. That's how I was too. Coming home every day after school and watching it at supper time, that was me. It became an obsession. I even ran an antenna in the closet so I could eke out a broadcast, albeit fuzzy, of Trek from several states away. And of course, taping the shows on my trusty Radio Shack cassette recorder so I could listen in bed at night. That's probably why to this day I can still recite whole episodes when I often can't remember what day it is. And why did I do this? There was plenty of other shows that captured my imagination, but not like Star Trek. Your reflection on the episode Arena was a good one. Here we had an alien invader, one that had killed Federation starbases and people stationed on them, but yet looked at humanely at the end. Kirk curbed his urge for revenge. That's not something we saw in too many primetime shows. We also had Kirk's "Risk is our business" speech. His speech that we are predators, but we are not going to kill today. Trek, along with my parents, helped to shape my morality and my feelings of right and wrong. 100%. Let me give it to you, Dave. You and I parked our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. As I got older, of course, I realized that in real life, things are very different. Still, it gave me something to strive for. It helped me realize how I would like to be treated and defined how I would treat people in return. Star Trek is a notion of a future we should strive for. Even Enterprise, a series set after a 9/11, still held that, and it was set after our 9/11 and was about a 9/11, still held that notion in a dark time. Modern Trek wants to have the bare bones of the franchises that came before it without having the soul of what made the past series so great. You know what? Let me read that again. Modern Trek wants to have the bare bones of the franchises that came before it without having the soul of what made the past series so great. Truer words were never written, sir. You can't do that. And I wish some of them would give the producers now working on the franchise some of my old audio cassettes of Arena, A Private Little War, A Taste of Armageddon, Devil in the Dark, among others. Lock them in a dark room, close their eyes, and just listen and imagine. Respectfully yours, and keep up the good work, Dave S. Well, Dave, needless to say, this is a fantastic letter. I want to thank you for writing in. I think, part of the thing with Star Trek for me, like yourself, I'm a little younger than you, but seeing it at that certain time, being a child of the 70s and seeing Star Trek, as a little kid, it was hugely influential. And absolutely it taught me morality and it taught me the difference between right and wrong, and it gave me people that I want to emulate or grow up and be like, or at least know people of that ilk. I knew that Star Trek, I was always aware. I was 5 years old. I didn't think, man, that's real. I knew it was fictitious. I knew it was made up. I knew it was all make-believe. But I really wanted to be a part of it. And I think that was great. Here's a change of pace. This is a good one. Hey, Rob, I'm always so jealous of your amazing collection of wonderful collectibles. All of my life, I've been a collector of a few trinkets here and there, nothing outrageous, but I want to change that. My query is, do you have anything in the Robservatory that's made by Kotobukiya? Do you have an opinion on them? You know what? I don't think I do, but I really like their stuff. They make more fixed statues and things like that. Sadly, Hot Toys is far beyond my current budget, but a guy can dream. The highest end stuff I've gotten as of yet would be things like the Star Wars Black series or the amazing NECA horror figures. The NECA horror figures are great. Kotobukiya seems to be a decent middle ground, pretty high quality sculpts, quite a bit more affordable. Was curious as to your opinion. As always, Godspeed, Tyler Vickery. Tyler, well, here's the thing. I agree with you. And to me, Hot Toys are the end of a journey. They're the end of a journey for me that began in the 70s with 12-inch G.I. Joes, Adventure Team G.I. Joes that morphed into Mego figures and Mego, the world's greatest superheroes, and of course Star Trek figures, and then that morphed into Star Wars figures. And, I really collected figures up to a point, mostly when I was a kid, and then I really stopped collecting action figures pretty much in 85, I collected them into high school. But then when Star Wars figures really stopped being made, I kind of just quit because there weren't any good 12-inch figures, which is what I ended up loving. I loved the Star Wars 12-inch figures at the time. So stopped. It wasn't until the late 90s when they started bringing out Star Wars 12-inch figures again, and then they were making movie figures, and there was a lot of bootleg figures that were coming out, that I actually started collecting figures again. And the Hot Toys figures, their first figures, I have a Hot Toys George Lucas figure. They made a bootleg The Director figure. They also made a Mission Impossible figure. I think it was from Mission Impossible 2, I think. An Ethan Hunt figure. And they were like bootleg figures as well. They didn't have the actual licenses. And then when Hot Toys figures, when they started making the Alien and Predator kits, they couldn't call them action figures because they were different licenses or whatever. That's when I started to get into Hot Toys figures again. And as they put out more, they got more licenses, and they were they just got better and better and better as they went along. And by the mid-aughts, I was really hooked on Hot Toys figures. And to me, they're the end of a journey. There's not going to be another no one's going to make a higher end action figure than Hot Toys does. I mean, people will try, but in terms of having a line, and it just got me back in. I mean, look, as a middle-aged man with one foot in the grave, I don't know why collect these figures. I just think they're so great, and I've liked them. And again, to me, if you go back on the Burnettwork, I did make a video of some of my collection. It's early on in the stream, and I had made it originally for the 100th episode of Heroes. And I kind of give a brief explanation of my journey through action figures and then why I collect Hot Toys, and then you get to see a lot of my collection, where it was in my old office, because I had a really nice display case, and I really liked how everything was kind of working there. But I really liked those. I like those figures. But there's so many. Like, I look at like what Kotobukiya is doing, and what like Prime One, and there's so many. I used to collect statues, but I just don't anymore. And there's so many. Although there's a Prime One statue of a Macross Batroid that I really, really want, and I might have to somehow bust on that Prime One Macross or Robotech statue. But I think, look, again, you should collect what you guys want to collect. You shouldn't, like, I would collect everything. If I had disposable income to burn, I would buy every Eagle Moss Star Trek ship. There's so many things that I'm interested in, I would just buy it all. Like, the things that I have a fetish for die-cast metal Japanese super robots from the 70s, and also metal fixed figuration Gundams. I mean, I love them. And the Soul of Chogokin line, I just buy all of them. I would buy all of those things because I've loved them, again, since I was a kid. And the toys now are so good. But then you what are you going to do? Like, I keep thinking about when if I had a myocardial infarction, knock on wood, and just died right now, if I keeled over dead, no one would care about all this stuff. They're like, what? What is all of this? I hope that Elizabeth would throw a party and just have everybody I know come over and take what they want. No, I guess for a small donation, because she would have to figure out a way to have to pay rent without me. So, but yeah, I think that you should collect what you want. And Star Wars Black figures, like, I think 12th scale figures are great, but man, they're expensive. I know Hot Toys figures are expensive, but I don't buy Hot Toys figures all the time. But if you were to collect Black scale, Star Wars Black series, and then the Mezco figures, and like this is a 12 scale figure. Like, I had to have this, right? Now, I do have there's 6 scale, this company, Twinch Squad, like 15 years ago, made 6 scale suits, and I never got the executive versions of these, but like, I got this. It's a 6 scale or 12 scale figure. I wouldn't normally collect this, but how can, it's Kubrick. How can I not? It's pretty cool, actually. But Mafex makes, they're Medicom, and they make a lot of I can't get into it. I mean, it would be endless. I was thinking maybe I'll only collect 12 scale X-Men figures, but I don't know, man. It would be bad. But you should collect what you love. And yeah, I think they make Kotobukiya makes a lot of good stuff. So buy it. I always, when I go to Comic-Con, that's a place where there's always dealers that have all of those things lined up, and I'm always looking at them. I'm always marveling at them. Here's a self-serving letter. You know what, though? I don't get many letters like this. I'm going to read this anyway, because why not? Eric LaPerriere, Laperriere, LaPerriere. I don't know. Hello, Robert. In the last couple of months, I discovered your YouTube channel through the John Campea Show, and now I'm an avid viewer follower. But I knew you before as Free Enterprise is a real classic for Star Trek fans. Funny fact, while dating my then girlfriend, now wife, I had her watch the movie so she could understand who I was and get why a grown-up has toys in the basement. Laugh out loud. In the basement? Well, I am in the garage, I guess. I don't know how much fiction meets reality with the Robert character in the movie, but if it's your life story as a Star Trek fan, well, being a child of the 70s myself, I totally understand where you're coming from. Thanks for your contributions to the sci-fi community, and keep up the good work. Have a good day, Eric L. I've been asked a lot about, over the years, over the last 2 decades, I've been asked a lot about how much. So for those of you who don't know, I wrote and directed a movie. I co-wrote it with Mark A. Altman, who I do the Inglorious Treksperts podcast with. Mark now produces the show Pandora for the CW, and he has a book coming out about an oral history of the James Bond movies that is quite good. I recently finished it, and he wrote 2 volumes along with Ed Gross. Ed Gross is his frequent collaborator. I met Mark because I'd read his books and his articles in Cinefantastique. So Mark and I wrote Free Enterprise, and how much of it is me? Well, a lot. The character of Robert, I basically took a lot of my bad qualities and sort of magnified them for the character. But yeah, we basically wrote what you knew, and there was, it was all about my life in LA, basically, up through when we made the movie in 1998. Unfortunately, the only place you can see it streaming, it's a 4x3 copy, an old transfer from 99. I did a new transfer. My preferred version of the movie is on the Anchor Bay 2-disc DVD that was released in 2006. It has not come out again. I would desperately like to get the movie and do what I want to call the Final Frontier cut of the film. Hopefully I would be able to finish it in 4K, because I've never quite been happy with how the movie was finished anyway, even though I went back and redid some of it in 2006. I'd like to go back and redo it again, because I think I can give the definitive version. I'd like to, because in a way it's, when people who know it, it's not really well known now, even though the people who know it really love it and they talk, because it's a total geek movie, comic books, and stars William Shatner and Eric McCormack on Will and Grace. But I appreciate the kind words. But yes, there was a lot of me in it. I mean, I can't convey to everybody just how much fun living in Los Angeles in the 90s was. I mean, sure, we never had enough money, but I was working on low budget movies. I dated lots of girls. I had a lot of good friends. I was writing for Sci-Fi Universe magazine. I later worked on the Star Trek Experience. I was a Star Trek consultant for Viacom licensing, and I was shooting music videos. I was just having a ball. And that was in my 20s going into my 30s. I mean, I was having a terrific, terrific time. And I met a lot of like-minded friends who are still my friends to this day. And it was great. I mean, somebody described it as we'd all heard the clarion call of the aliens from Close Encounters, and Los Angeles was our Devil's Tower. So I met a lot of like-minded friends that I still know even now, and I'm still work with and collaborate with, and it was great. And that's what Free Enterprise really was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a celebration of our geeky, all of our geeky pursuits, and also our love of all this stuff, and our friendships, and of course our love of William Shatner. So I thought hopefully it was an inherently positive movie for people. But yeah, a lot of people have told me, I loved hearing it again, I haven't heard it in a while, that people would show their significant others, usually it was guys showing girls Free Enterprise and saying, you got to watch this so you have a little understanding, insight into me. So I love hearing that. I appreciate that very much. So thank you, Eric, for talking about that. Yeah. I don't know what that says about me, though. It's funny. I really wish, as many people know, we were very close to making the sequel to Free Enterprise. It was called Free Enterprise, The Wrath of Shatner. And we were days away from shooting it. We lost our funding. I was very upset that we never got to make that movie. But I'm hoping that one day, I'm still clinging to this. If I could raise the money, I'd love to go make Free Enterprise 2 because I liked the script. I like the script a lot. Mark and I wrote a script, and it's a different kind of a script. It's a little bit more outlandish, but I think it's funny. Mukbang sent in a super chat saying, "You're so funny. Here in John Campion on Schmodown. Have you ever done stand-up?" No, no. I first of all, thank you for, I used to date a girl that was told me all the time that I was not funny, that I didn't understand comedy, and which always perplexed me because I had made a movie that's a comedy, and I think I'm pretty funny. I like comedy, but I appreciate you saying that. For those of you who don't know, the Schmodown draft is tomorrow, and I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to do this, where I'm going to go. I was watching, somebody did a mock draft today, and of course I'm making notes. I'm looking what all the Schmodown fans are saying. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. But yeah, I appreciate that. It's a character. It's fun to play that character. Like, for those of you who don't know, if you don't know what the movie trivia Schmodown is, it was created by Mark Ellis and Christian Harloff, and it's a movie trivia game. It's on YouTube. You can see it. It's been going for years now. That is sort of based on wrestling, the WWF. And at first, I started out, and I did okay. I was the first Inner Geekdom champion. But that was when you'd go in and you talk about what you knew off the top of your head. Like, there was no studying. I just did it because it was fun. I did it with Schnepp. I've done it with Campia. We were team heroes. We did okay. And then I was the Inner Geekdom champion. And then it started to get serious, and people started studying. And what happens is, my mind is full of a lot of stuff, but there's whole years where I was busy. Like, I didn't keep up on all of this stuff, so there are voids in my knowledge, and it started to not be fun. I just started to lose. So then I became, they asked me, I didn't know what a heel was. I didn't know who Ric Flair was. I didn't know anything about wrestling, really, except back in the 80s. And so I'm like, I want to be a heel. I want to be a bad guy. And it's fun. So I play this character, the captain. I wear this very ornate jacket, and I scream and yell a lot. And now I'm a manager, and I have my new team. We're having our first draft tomorrow, and my Schmodown team is called, as it comes probably as no surprise to anyone, the Burning Droogs. Of course, younger Schmodown people are like, I don't know what that means. Well, Alex and his merry band of brigands were called Droogs, and everyone knows I love Clockwork Orange. So, yeah. But thank you for Mukbang. I appreciate the fact that you think I'm funny. And, maybe next time I'll sing some International Lover. Let me take you around the world. Yeah, anyway. Billy Russo says, the only reason why I watch Star Trek Discovery is Michelle Yeoh. Yeah, you know what? I would watch anything that Michelle Yeoh is in. I love Michelle Yeoh. I've always loved Michelle Yeoh, and oh my God. Jamin D sends a very, very, very generous super chat. Why, thank you so much. Hey, Rob, I'm not sure you are aware of this or not, but Mike and Rich from Red Letter Media are also big fans of Star Trek. Oh, I am. I discovered Red Letter Media because I watched their Generations review. That's how I first discovered who Mike was. And I was just blown away. I hope you guys collaborate because under their jokes and puns, there is a true understanding of what Star Trek is about. Well, Jaimin, let me tell you. First of all, again, thank you very much for supporting the channel. Let me tell you about them. I think their videos that are, first they started out analyzing the Next Generation films. They did videos on all 4 Next Generation movies, and then they did must-see deconstructions of the prequels. All of it is spot on. Now, of course, they did it through the guise of the character Mr. Plinkett, who is a pizza roll eating serial killer, a bad guy, but I understand why they did it that way. But I do think that their reviews, the points they make, are spot on. They have an incredible grasp of Star Trek, and I really, really love those guys. I love what they do. I've loved what they've done for a very long time, and I think you're absolutely right. It's funny now that I've been on YouTube, people are reaching out. You know who reached out to me today? Gary Beekler, Nerdrotic, and said he was coming into town. He's like, hey man, let me buy you a cup of coffee. Now, I have told people I've been watching Gary Beekler. He's somebody that even if I disagree with him, even if maybe he sometimes can be a little more angry than even I can be when it comes to Star Trek, I really like his channel. And again, I really like what he does, and I admire all these people. Whether you like certain YouTubers or not, I still hand it to anybody who's out there putting their opinions out on the line, putting who they are. I mean, what are we selling? Us. I mean, if you don't like us, you turn us off. It's like, that guy's a douchebag, man. I don't want to watch that dude anymore. And I'm sure a lot of people say that about me. But anybody who's out there doing that, I've developed a real appreciation. And Gary is out there making videos all the time, and I really admire what. And by the way, a game I like to play with myself whenever I watch Gary's channel is he has a lot of action figures in the frame, and I'm always finding new ones. I'm like, oh, he's got this big chief doctor who there's many layers, and I've never stopped his show and zoomed in, but one day I'm going to. But I'm looking forward to meeting him. I've never met him face to face, and I look forward to sitting down. I'm sure if we go get a coffee, we'll spend like 8 hours in a Starbucks chattering away. It'd be funny if we actually if I met him in a Starbucks and we just go on and do a live video. I think we should. I think Gary and I should go on and do just a random live video. Maybe if I can convince him to do that, because he's got way more subscribers than I do, so he would have to call the shots. But I would love to do that, because I think we would have a great time talking Trek. Lorenzo Princi, oh my God, Lorenzo. Wow, I cannot thank you enough. That is tremendous. Thank you. Wow, thank you so much. Lorenzo, hey Rob, I just wanted to say congrats on the continued expansion of the show. Love the new setup, and thanks for the ongoing interesting chats. Well, Lorenzo, you humble me, sir. I don't have any alcoholic beverages with me at this time, but one of my viewers, Tom, did send me a lot of Allagash product. So I love my Allagash beer. I also love my Allagash water glass. So here's to you, sir. Thank you for that. That is very nice. But I appreciate that. I'm going to expand. Like, as people who have been watching lately know, I've been having some problems getting things to sync up and remembering to turn on my mic, because I'm using this new software that John turned me on to. It's not new software, it's old software, but it's new to me. And there's a lot I can do. And for instance, next week I'm going to have a guest here in the Robservatory, my friend Paul Salamoff, who directed a low-budget indie film called Encounter. And you'll be able to ask questions for him, and I want to talk to him about what's it like to make an indie feature. I've known Paul. Paul and I both worked for Tony Gardner's Altarian Studios, the makeup effects lab. When I was there, I worked on Cast a Deadly Spell, the Stephen King film Mick Garris directed Sleepwalkers, the Swamp Thing TV series, and of course Army of Darkness, amongst other things. Paul also worked there. So I've known him for the better part of, more than 25 years, and he finally directed his first feature, which is terrific, and I want to talk to him about that. So, I have to add another camera and more lights, but as we continue on, I really appreciate that, Lorenzo, and I promise I want to make the show bigger and better, and it's going to expand, and as I build out the Robservatory, I really, my hope is to be able to bring more guests here and have, it depends. I mean, I'll see what the audience wants. What if you don't like chats with other people, but I think most of the people I know are pretty interesting. And then I've got some things that I want to promote. Obviously, I've got the Dust short film that I edited that Lucas Kendall wrote and directed, drops on the 23rd, the same day as Picard. There's some other exciting information about a couple of other projects that I'm involved with that I'm not at a liberty to announce them because it's not my place to announce them, but I'll be talking about those. Also, of course, Tango Shalom. And when I go, I'm going to New York, and I'll be at the live Schmodown event in New York. So I'm still trying to, if there's anybody in the New York area that wants to come hang out, we're in Brooklyn. The Schmodown event is in Brooklyn. I don't know where I'm going to be staying quite yet, but might have a little get-together in the city. So if anybody can make that maybe we can do that happen. Make that happen. The Richard is here. Speaking of droogs, where's the clockwork pee-pee chair? Did you see that picture? It's the rocking machine. It's the Herman Mechanics. It's actually right over there. You can't see it, but yes, I do have a 1-to-1 scale rocking machine from Clockwork Orange, which is essentially Herman Mechanics rocking machine. It's a woman's behind and a male member, and this is the 6 scale version that actually belongs right back here. But as Timbula the Spider Monkey will tell you, I always remove it, so no one on John Campy's show will complain. But, so that is a sculpture. I have a 1-to-1 scale version of it because it's Clockwork Orange, and I love Clockwork Orange. So, yes, indeed. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Here's a change of pace. I like this. John Hiroshi. I think it's Hiroshi. I think it's Hiroshi. Hey, my name is John Hiroshi from Utah. I want to talk about the new The Who album called Who. The album was okay. It wasn't Star Trek Discovery bad, more just okay, like Jodie Whittaker's Doctor Who. It had good ideas that didn't seem to come together to be completely great. I sort of like Break the News, co-written by Pete Townsend and Simon Townsend, which was a lighthearted, cute song. I sort of like the orchestration background music on Hero Ground Zero. Maybe Beads on a String will grow on me, but I doubt it. Overall, I wouldn't recommend the album. I love the community. Thanks for your time. John H. John, that's disappointing. I mean, The Who, I love The Who. I used to have a paper route. Believe it or not, when I was a kid, I had 53 houses on my paper route, and I did it every day. And, nobody was going to buy me blank videotapes at those prices. So the only way I could get blank videotapes when I was in junior high school, when I was 13, was, at $30 a tape, $25 and $30 for a blank VHS. I know people are like, what? That's what it was like in the early days, yo. I was daisy chaining VCRs and copying movies from the video store, and blank videotapes were like gold in my house. Every year, my parents gave me a box of 10. I think it was 10 tapes. TDK or Maxell were my videotapes of choice, and that was a big deal to get 10 blank VHS tapes. Yo, I know that in the day that's like nothing, but back then it was a lot, and that's why I had a paper route. But on my paper route, all I listened to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, and Pink Floyd, and that's it. That's all I listened to, and it was because when I had a paper route, I would get into a trance. There were times when I'd have to go back and look at someone's house and see, oh yeah, I did. Because you're doing the same repetition every single day. You kind of go into a trance, and I'd be listening to the music, and I love The Who. I love The Who. Live at Leeds. I love the version of Magic Bus that was in Live at Leeds. You can have the Magic Bus for 100 English pounds. Too much. Yeah, I love that. I love The Who. I want to hear this album. I have not heard this album yet, but if it's not that impressive, it's strange. Give it up for The Who for putting out a Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend. Amazing that they're making music. How old are they? Let's find out, shall we? How old is Pete Townsend? Let's see. I want to know. Pete Townsend is 74 years old, and he's still swinging that axe, man. That guy, I'm telling you, it's an eminence front. It's a put on. Not when you're Pete Townsend. He's never put anybody on. The guy is a rock and roll legend. Let's hear it for Mr. Pete Townsend. Yes, that's very cool. I did not know that that album. But, I understand. I hope that it would be great. But not everything can be great. Now, when you're 74, it's so funny to me because rock and roll, I would expect that in the world that we live in now, we'd be getting a lot more new rock and roll, maybe protest era music. Maybe that's coming. We haven't heard it yet, but I'd like to. I think we should get more of it. But yeah, I don't know. Now here's another a short one. This comes from Jet Screamer. I love your show so much. However, I stream video games in the afternoon. I have since set up a second TV just so I can watch your show. I love the new set. We'll write more soon. Thank you for being so encouraging. Mark. Well, Mark, thanks for writing in. I mean, I appreciate that. You know, one of the things that I want to stress, if people haven't got the idea, is you imagination connoisseurs that make up the Post-Geek Singularity community. My goal for the second season of Robservations is to build our community out. And I want to do that by, whether it's community outreach, maybe going places, setting up, whether, you know, if I could get Free Enterprise back and do a new version of it, do what Kevin Smith does, go on the road, show it, and maybe have a night where I could bring guests with me and we could do what he does. Or even just by getting more videos from people around the world and playing them. I mean, I know a lot of people don't want to do that, and I don't want anybody to feel any pressure. But basically what I want to do with this channel is to make it more of like a convention, you know, where we can all meet people. I mean, a lot of us, I don't know if I'll ever meet Vesna in the flesh, but she sent me a video all the way from Sarajevo. And how cool is that? You know, I mean, Vesna's been here almost since the beginning, and Joseph, who's an incredible artist. And there's a lot of us that are all around the country. Timbula the Spider Monkey, Tim's in Australia. I mean, there's Swag Props Cal. He's in Indonesia, Malaysia. Why am I drawing a blank? One of the two. I think he's in Malaysia. And how cool is that? Making his amazing work, and it's been. I want to expand that. I want to have more of that. I want people to come here and feel that they have a place where they can hang out and talk. And if I'm so caught up and I forget to switch my camera back on, that it's okay, because there's enough going on in the live chat where you guys are having fun, even though I have forgotten that my camera's not on. So, yeah, that's what I hope for this channel. And by the way, that's why the website, the Burnettwork.net, is also a place to go. That's why we put everybody's letters up there. There's the Imagination Connoisseur Gallery. People are sending in more stuff to put up at the Imagination Connoisseur Gallery. And it's fun for me because I go and look at all that stuff, and I feel like, wow, there's a lot of stuff here, and that's a place where people can interact, and another place where you can see other people's things. Like the 3-word movie reviews always crack me up. You people are very clever out there. You're very clever. But, you know, I think on that note, to understand, like, that's where I'm going. I think on that note, let me make sure I don't think I've missed anybody. Oh, Roberto Suarez says, you said you're coming to Portland to do some work. Any interest in planning a meetup? Well, for those who if you don't know, I created, along with my friend, well, Mike Schertz created it. My buddy Mike Schertz, Dr. Mike Schertz, he's 18 Delta and he's an MD. Mike Schertz is a doctor. He's an emergency room physician at a hospital in Portland, Oregon. And I created, along with him, well, I directed, he has a lecture series that he gives for pre-hospital care. If you're in an active violent event, a shooting, a building collapse, a fire, and you need pre-hospital care, or you know somebody who does, if you're with somebody who got shot, his course, Crisis Medicine, will provide that. And it's a lecture series. There's a day-long course, a 3-day-long course, and a week-long course that I directed, shot, edited for him, and we're doing 2 more of those. So I'm going to be up in Portland at the end of this month. I go to New York, I come home for a day, then I go to Portland. So I don't know how that's going to affect the show, but I will be, at some point, I'm going to be doing some work on this show in both New York and Portland, Oregon. So more landscapers. So yeah, you know, Roberto, that would be I wouldn't mind that. We should. Portland's got a lot of great bars, and it's gonna be really tight, but I am doing some work at a place called. It's interesting. I mean, I never thought about this, but maybe I could open up what we're doing. I'll have to ask Mike, so some people could come in and actually watch us shoot one of the courses. I don't know if anybody would be interested in doing that, but it's pretty interesting. His courses are really interesting. And I never thought about that. But yes, I'm going to be up in Portland, I think, beginning on the 28th. And I think we shoot on the 29th and 30th. We're going to shoot for 2 days. So, yeah, it's that could be fun to do. So that is definitely something that we could definitely arrange. So, yeah. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of Robservations episode number 315 as next door they start landscaping. I want to thank everybody for the generous support of this channel. Really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very, very much. As you noticed, the Lucky Tiger sponsorship, the year of Lucky Tiger sponsorship ended, and I'm eternally grateful. So always trying to make that up. So thank you very much for the generous support. I will be back tomorrow, of course. And of course, my God, the Jedi Knights of the Pacific Northwest are playing Green Bay in the playoffs this weekend. My God. And so that's what do you think, Gilbert? Do you want to say hello to anybody? You want to come up here? No one? Why don't you come say hello? Come on. I know I don't have a cookie. I'd give him. Hang on. What do I got here? Do I have anything? No. What is this? No. I'm out of cookies. I'm out of cookies, Gilbert. I'm sorry. I'm out of cookies. I know. Now he's all bummed. He's like, you don't have anything to give me, you traitor. But anyway, where was I? I was signing off. If you like these chats, please hit like, please subscribe, as everyone says on YouTube, the analytics. Oh, well, here's Tallulah. Why don't you say hello, Tallulah? Say hello to everybody. You're going to lick the microphone? Is that what you want to do? Oh, give me a kiss, baby. Yes. Oh, yes. So Tallulah, obviously, she's here. Big yawn. You didn't squeak. Anyway, I want to thank you for another great week. Anyway, I, of course, am going to sign off. I have to thank my great moderating staff. Of course, the Honorable Mayor Mike Bodden of Riverdale, Iowa. He is actually a mayor, and he, of course, is the man with the plan as far as the website is concerned. The great Greg Smith, my old friend Greg Smith. Oh, that was a good noise. What kind of noise was that? And, of course, we have Detective Jim, who keeps everybody on the straight and narrow, and Louis Yu and Jordy Lyons, our moderating staff, which is what makes these chats the best chats ever, because they're moderated by great men. And, if there's any women out there that also want to be a moderator, we're looking all the time. I mean, I keep waiting for Willow Yang to say, I know, but she's getting her PhD, so she's too busy. Anyway, this brings an end to Robservations episode number 315. And I say to you, remember that every person you meet has a story to tell you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say, remember the Burning Droogs tomorrow at the Schmodown Draft. If you have any ideas for me, who you want me to pick, I'm the fourth pick. I go fourth because I swap with Kaiser. We'll see how that goes. I know, everyone's like, corruption. Yeah, well, we'll see. Anyway, I want to thank all of you. And as always, as I always say, have a better day, and I'll see you tomorrow.